Going back to the plane issue, I mean, I did a study of the witness accounts from the first responders, a deliberate study, and this is, I sort of basically tell people this is really the only bit of original research that I've done into 9/11 is the study of the witness accounts. Right. And I catalogued all of that, and I put some statistics together. I made a database, and that's all on the website. And I basically discovered that from the first responders, i.e. the emergency medical technicians and the firemen, I identified 117 people who were at or inside the World Trade Center towers when this supposed second plane struck. Right. And out of those witnesses, out of those 117, only 21 saw the second plane, only 20 heard it, and only 8 of them saw or heard the plane. I think it was 8 or 8%, certainly not many. So it was a relatively small number that actually claimed to have seen this plane actually come in. I mean, this is meant to be a 767 with, 757. I can never remember which one it is, with jet engines that are louder than a rock concert. Screaming into the echoing sort of streets of New York, where you've got the sound bouncing off all these buildings and around the streets. It's going to be a huge, great noise, and apparently hardly anybody heard it. Yeah. And so that's an anomaly. We've got people in the first responders saying, oh, when I got there, I didn't know planes were involved, and in fact I didn't find that out until the next day. And you can go and actually read these accounts, which were published on the New York Times website after a Freedom of Information request in 2005. There's 500 of them, and I downloaded all 500 accounts and then did keyword searches. It took quite a while to do this,
Yeah.
So people can look at this again. This is a different thread of evidence. This is not so much the forensic, photographs. It's actually a study of the witness accounts, and they can come to their own conclusions about the plane stories. Look at the video record. Look at Richard Hall's analysis that he's done, which was published recently, and it's been very, very interesting. Generated a lot of traffic, and really people should have a good look at that and see what they make of it. Because again, the plane story at the World Trade Center is probably more complicated than people would like to accept.
Yeah, I think we're going to go to a song now. I think if we've got one lined up, and after that, I'd like to talk more about that, because some very interesting stuff. Obviously, we haven't even touched on the Pentagon and whatnot yet. So if we can get a song playing, and we'll be back in a few minutes, people, and we'll carry on with this.
A random thought that I was just thinking about is, how much stuff we accomplish or don't accomplish. It's really, compared to my academic life, you wonder, how come you don't get much done? It's like you're walking through thick honey in everything you do because you're swimming upstream.
Yeah. Well, you're swimming against the tide of perception management and misinformation, black propaganda. It all has a net effect, I guess, doesn't it, on your actual output ultimately? Mm.
Like this last week, there was somebody who posted an article, and they had me and Morgan Reynolds as the author, and it was about space-based laser weapons. Right.
Well, we've already actually discussed this before, and to the best of my knowledge, I couldn't find any reference where you're actually saying that...
You would have that if that was still out there. They had me as the author.
Right.
Morgan. And I never wrote such an article.
No. It was copied from your website appendix, wasn't it? On one of the appendices.
Right. But it had the, right up, but they didn't ask me, and I wasn't the author either. It was in the appendix reference.
Yeah, that's right. The bizarre thing was that this person who posted this article, he claimed that he'd spoken to me about it.
Huh.
And I
told me.
Yeah, and it was very strange because Judy was saying, "Oh, he's spoken to you," and I was saying, "Who is he? I haven't spoken to anyone." And,
it's one of those classic a source close to Dr. Judy.
Well, it wasn't quite like that, because he wasn't totally lying. He had actually spoken to me, but we didn't bring up this topic. And the last time I spoke to him was in February, so that was 6 months ago, 7 months ago even, and we didn't talk about that. In fact, I told this guy at the time exactly what we've discussed tonight about the Hutchinson effect evidence and all this. And none of that evidence was in this article that he posted. It was a complete...
It was about space beams, yeah.
Yeah, it was about space beams, basically. I think everything but that term was missing. And it was falsely attributed. as Dr. Judy said to Dr. Judy and Morgan Reynolds. You know, it was just ridiculous. And this, you know, I mean, we get this every couple of weeks, and then we have a sort of clear period, and then the latest food fight will start. We get all these emails from people saying that, you know, so and so has said this and that and the rest of it, and you know, it's just crazy stuff, you know.
At the very worst, from their point of view, they're going to embroil you in a he said, she said sort of nonsense scenario for weeks, which will again have a detrimental effect on your ability to disseminate the evidence you've found in that. It's
I don't know if we should get into what Fetzer did. I don't know if we should cover what Fetzer did.
In which part?
My book was supposed to be coming out last fall, and for the 6 weeks there, Fetzer on his radio show was doing this horrendous stuff, plus sending out mountains of emails to about every radio host he knew and a pile of other people. And with various rumors that he'd gotten other people to start, who later retracted them. One of which was I was having sex with John Hutchison. That's why I was promoting the fraud.
Oh, how was that?
I don't know. I mean, do you have to be in the same country, you know?
Yeah. Is the Hutchinson effect all it's cracked up to be then?
Yeah.
we were making jokes like this, you know. And I remember we obviously at one level we it was a bit horrible that this was going on, these sorts of allegations which were coming out. We just explain who Jim Fetzer is. I mean, he basically was the co-founder of this Scholars for 9/11 Truth Group, and at one point he invited me onto the steering committee. This is what I've had to write about, you know, and this is me with no published papers, no advanced degrees, you know, nothing like that. So, you know, he's basically inviting me onto the steering committee. Later, when as soon as we came up with the Hutchinson effect, he described me as I was childish, and you know, I had no ability to think in terms of deductive reasoning or some of the rubbish that he came out with. So, you know, it was just this crazy story. And then you know, as Dr. Judy was saying, he came out with these allegations of sexual misdeeds with John Hutchison being involved, and he spanned this round to everyone. And I'm thinking, what the hell has this got to do with what happened on 9/11? It's got absolutely nothing to do with it, you know. And so we were having this sort of mock hearing, you know. And I think I said to Judy, you know, I did not have sexual relations with that man, you know. And we were sort of laughing for about half an hour at that one. It just seemed so bizarre, you know. It was just ridiculous. It just got to the point of being ridiculous, and we couldn't do anything but laugh about it, you know.
But I came upon someone who told me to take the Hutchison effect out of my book. It was going to discredit me. Who had been listening to Fetzer's stuff. In other words, it was effective.
Yeah. Well, that's the sad thing about it, is that unfortunately it is effective, and it's very difficult to know how to measure your response to all this disinformation and sabotage and stuff, because to engage with it actually means you end up embroiled in it to the detriment of what you were actually doing, which of course is part of the point, isn't it? You spend so much time refuting nonsense and disinformation that you actually find it very difficult to do what you're supposed to be doing in the first place.
Here's another question. Do you think I can ever get a faculty job again?
I would know what I know about mainstream academia. I'd be very surprised if your name's not
right away. The internet trolls were writing to my colleagues at Clemson and posting their responses on troll forums.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's that's somebody's life, and there's nobody who's held accountable.
That's it. I mean, just taking a mini step back, I just wanted to add something that I'd mentioned to Judy yesterday. I was at a conference, Leeds, and I give out these articles in little booklets. You know, it's just the cheapest way to deliver the information. Mm-hmm. And I've collected these articles, which are basically, you know, my rebuttals to a lot of the trash that's been posted.
Right.
And I happened to give this to one chap in the morning. I had a chat with him in the afternoon just to see what his interest was, and he surprised me because he'd actually started reading the booklet, you know, actually between the morning and the afternoon.
Right.
And he said to me, "Oh, well, I read some of it, but it just sounds like a lot of people arguing, and it doesn't make for very interesting reading."
Right.
You know, and that's again going back to the problem you described. There's so much of it that you get into this cycle, and it just, unless you know the backstory, It's just not really that interesting to get into, you know. So this is the problem, that all this trash is generated, and it basically dilutes all the serious, important study of the evidence, and that's what it's for. And it's easy to lose sight of that, and I've lost sight of it a few times. You know, don't get me wrong, but you know, so that's what it's for. And I think if people read that book, if they can, they'll see in real time how the misinformation and disinformation was being generated, and I've tried to write it as a kind of real-time study, if you will. And if they do that, they'll then be able to see that going on. You know, another of the areas I investigate is to do with chemtrails, and I've spoken quite a lot about that. And I've seen similar sorts of things going on in that, and I've done a skills transfer from the study of 9/11 to the study of chemtrails and the study of the UFO stuff. And I've seen exactly the same sort of patterns going on, you know, so it's been quite useful for me, certainly, if not for anybody else.
Yeah. I mean, those of us who... Sorry, go on, Dr. Judy.
I'm a member of a private forum, and one that you expect to be infiltrated. And then just, you know, last night, when nobody was looking, there was a couple of them that just started launching out, you know, seeing if they could rile me up. I'm thinking, okay, now I know. That's a lookalike, you know. You recognize the pattern. They're trying to get people stirred around in circles so they go nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that it's a pretty formulaic as well, so when you've watched it occur a couple of times, it becomes self-evident and transparent as you've seen it unfolding for the God knows how many times. So it's less of a shock when you see it, and it doesn't take quite so long to see through what various people are up to, I think. But ultimately, it's very difficult to know what to do about it, isn't it?
But you see it, and you understand it, and you just, okay, that person doesn't exist anymore. You just, you know, wall them up because they're useless to you. You know, a troll or whatever. But other people around you haven't learned that yet, and they're, you know, still think this person's valid, and they want to know why you don't think they are, and they don't have the background, and there's no way you can catch them up on the background. That's a tough one.
Yeah, that's right. That's been my experience. You know, I know people who always said, well, look, this guy is not, you know, he's not looking at the evidence, he's not looking for the truth. And they'll say, well, how do you know? And I'll say, well, look, there's this and this and this and this and this. And they'll say, but so what? You know, that doesn't prove anything. And so you're back into the same sort of cycle again.
Yeah, and they are very good at it.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,